Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. So based on my thumbnail, you probably already know what I'm about to speak about, and it's just regarding the raid and the discovery mode of the raid that the developers have actually decided to put into the game. Now, let's first start out from where all of this came from. So first, when the raid came out, it seemed apparently that it was actually not balanced well in regard to console players because it was a little bit more difficult. Difficulty was crazy, for the raid, and console things are different in the way both sides are played until the console players eventually just figured it out. And now on console, many people run it much more frequently. But a lot of people talked about maybe nerfing the raid or making a kind of discover mode that didn't have the kinds of rewards or the same amount of the same level of rewards that the original raid itself had. And so that was a conversation. The developers said they weren't going to nerf the raids in a sense, but the major aspect of the raids that kind of drove a lot of people away from the game was the matchmaking. So the discussion about changing the difficulty of the raid didn't necessarily ring true to a lot of the community, even though some people wanted that. But the most important aspect was the matchmaking that the raid did not have. That set a chasm between a lot of people accessing the content. So after a lot of discussions, after a lot of videos, like 20 videos from just my channel alone, and maybe other people in the community raising a storm, the developers decided to add a matchmaking system and also a discovery mode for the raid. The only difference is, according to Hamish Bode, he said it's not going to be as rewarding in the sense that some items will probably not be able to drop from the discovery mode. And so in all essence, I genuinely think that this is probably a half a step in the right direction, and I'll explain. So if they're going to make the discovery mode for the raid to be able to drop maybe the loot, the same types of gear that the raid have, but not the Eagle Bearer, then in my opinion, what is the point in doing a discovery mode? Just add the matchmaking system, which is pretty much what the community basically asked for, and then just leave the raid to remain in its original difficulty. Or if they're going to add a discovery mode, then reduce the percentage drop rate for the Eagle Bearer, which in all reality, it's going to still achieve the end result for the developers, which is people still get to play and interact with the raid mission that they've already designed. Why make a mode that people are probably going to play once and most likely not touch again? Or maybe they're farming it for the gear, and then when they get the so-called gear sets that are behind this raid, maybe the one of them's the Negotiator's Dilemma, the other one's called the Aces or something. Once I get a full 6 set, I'm not going to touch that raid anymore. And so replayability is what the Division developers should be thinking about, in my opinion, when they make a mission. Now, I saw a tweet the other day from Wids. He was expressing his concerns about the new expedition missions, and he said this was just not up to par, and he was actually referring to the fact that if you play these missions, where is the replayability factor in them? And I think that was a good way to actually, pose his argument, even though, he was a little harsh in the argument, but that was basically what he was saying. So if you make the raid where you have a discovery mode, you have matchmaking, where is the replayability in that raid? In fact, the main raid itself has replayability because the Eagle Bearer is actually hidden and locked behind that major raid. But now you have the discovery mode, which is actually very easy because Wids and Solid, they did a 2-man raid where 2 of them themselves ran through Boomer, Buddy and Lucy, and then I think the other dual bosses, but they didn't bother touching the 4th boss because you need 4 people to stand in this specific locations, and just showed how easy it was. And good on the community for getting something like that. But once people start playing that and start getting their gear, or they get their 6 pieces, they're going to just either use it for maybe a farming source for the gear and leave, but I don't think there'll be replayability in that sense. I genuinely believe that the Eagle Bearer should be added to the Discover mode, but its percentage drop rate should be much more lower, and then you're going to have people actually start running the raid. In fact, I know exactly what you might be saying, but people are going to stop running the main raid because, they are able to get the Eagle Bearer from the Discover mode. So be it. Players are still going to be playing the game. It doesn't really matter what they're doing at that point. That's, I think, the main instance that I'm arguing here. If the developers want people to play their game, then they have to make it worth people's time to play the game. And that's just it. I'm not saying, everybody needs to be included. I'm just saying look at it from the perspective of people playing the game. I don't care if I have the Eagle Bearer or not. I'm not a New Division player. I can live without an exotic weapon. Trust me, there have been so many of them. And just wait and see. By the time the game is, a few months down the road, the Eagle Bearer is not going to be the best weapon in the game. They're going to release better weapons. They're going to be behind other missions. And then the Eagle Bearers are going to be like the SMGs right now, just sitting there and becoming something something forgettable. And that's just the way the division is. If you know the pattern of the game, one exotic becomes the best possible exotic and then they nerf it to the ground. If you remember the Caduceus used to be the very best assault rifle that you can get. That thing used to heal you. And then all of a sudden they decided to nerf it because they wanted to make other weapons in the game relevant. And so they're going to go ahead and do stuff like that down the road. And everybody knows, I'm not saying they're going to nerf it, but they're probably going to introduce other exotics that are going to be more powerful down the line. And so the race and the obsession with the Eagle Bearer is going to wear away. I know the way these things work, but I'm just saying, for the sake of the community, for the sake of replaying these missions, for the sake of making the game relevant as a whole, this is probably one way that they can approach it. So State of the Game is going to be popping up here very soon, God willing. We're going to be able to watch and kind of hear what the developers say. And I'm hoping that they actually say something to that effect and be very wise in how they approach it. Because if they make the Discover mode, fine, it's going to let people be able to complete the raid. Hopefully they actually allow for it to have the gear sets, because if it doesn't even have the gear sets, that's even going to be worse, because people are going to just maybe play it once to see the end of the raid and then go back to what they were doing. Hopefully they're still playing the game. But if they weren't playing the game in the first place and then they beat the raid and they find out, well, where's the reward for even doing this activity, and they find out that there's nothing behind it, they'll go back to maybe uninstalling the game or doing whatever they were doing before. So this is just an opinion piece, something that developers can consider and take into account when they're putting this Discover mode out there. Few people ask for it. It's good that they're listening to the community as a whole. The matchmaking is the big deal, I think, and the matchmaking being in the main raids themselves. I think that's probably, if that's implemented, that will be a better advancement, because now we can actually join in groups randomly. If somebody leaves, you can matchmake, and we can try to run and beat the raid missions themselves. All right, that is all I have. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Thank you very much for your time and your audience, and I guess I'll see you in the next video. Peace.